Morning.
Good morning. It's 8:30. Let's go ahead and get started with the April 13th Utility Policy Committee meeting. Call the meeting to order. Any changes or corrections to the agenda?
Yes, I would like to add just a quick discussion of the wellhead protection requirements of the contract and the status of that. And I don't know if that would be new or unfinished, so I'll let the chair decide.
Put it under the new section. Motion.
So moved. Or
Motion by Tom, support by Jim to set the agenda as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Introduction, yes, we have board this morning, and then guest with us. Start. Then
Brian Dolan, Brian Newman.
people dire, Brian. Baker, and then online.
Jeff Sorensen, Cooper Township, and also let the minutes reflect of the last meeting that I was present.
Good morning.
Morning, Rich. I think that was Rich.
Anna Horner, Ashtabula Township.
And Steve Vicenzi, City of Kalamazoo.
Thank you. Item 4 is acceptance of the March 9th, 2023 draft minutes, and we have one correction to Jeff Sorensen with no attendance. Any other changes?
Move acceptance.
Second.
Motion by David, second by Jeff, to accept the minutes with the one change. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Any public comments today? Hearing none, we'll proceed to item 6, unfinished business. Item A is the water rate affordability follow-up and schedule. And Brian, you have
Perfect. Okay, thank you again. I'm Brian Vilma with Brian Vilma. It's been a pleasure working with everybody on this project. Just for the public and for the record, it's an affordability program that the state of Michigan did a series of grants about a year and a half ago, for a grant, excuse me, that municipalities were eligible to sign up for, which provided funding, 100% funding to allow them to investigate putting together a affordability program. Quite a large majority of the municipalities that received those grants proceeded with rate studies, which was great for them, I think, but it also really only addressed water rates for those folks. And I know that the program administrators of the state of Michigan for this affordability program and some others that I'll mention here in a moment, we're very pleased that the Kalamazoo water system took us in a direction of actually looking at a true affordability program. So kudos to you all for taking advantage of that grant and proceeding in a direction that really looks at a much larger picture than just a simple water rate study. So it's important to know that what you guys have accomplished with this is a really good thing, and there's a lot of eyes on it, and hope for a lot of people that it's starting something very concrete that will be impactful for your community, for the Kalamazoo community, and potentially others as they look at the program and see what options there are for creating a sustainable system. So congratulations on that. The grant period has ended. Originally, those grants were a year long. We did receive a 6-month extension for this one, simply because of the amount of work we're trying to get done and the program we're trying to get started and set up. So that period has now ended, but I think we've got a document in a program that is ready to implement whenever you guys. So again, kudos for all the work on that. Where we stand right now, there's a few final recommendations. You guys have the report. All the things that we discussed, really were able to incorporate the final pieces of everything. Some of the highlights are that because we have a current water agreement right now, all the partner communities, but not a sewer agreement, we're leaving and making a suggestion that we stick to a 1% change in the water rates. And it would be for those residential customers only, because those are the customers that would be able to take advantage of the program if they qualify at the income level, which simplifies the logistics and really puts the cost into the user group that would directly benefit from the program. So you provide that from an administrative perspective and legal perspective. So that's a good starting point. And I think we appreciate that the 1% number generates around $146,000 right now, subtracting some admin costs that we'll have with the Community Action Agency for administration of the intake and qualification evaluation. We figure there's going to be around 110,000 direct assistance available. If we do if you do the $33 a month water bill credit, which would take care of the average water bill for a user or family, that's around 280 households or so that would receive full direct benefit. There's been some discussion of possibly reducing that monthly support benefit, spreading that assistance over more families. That's something you guys can decide ultimately before you do implementation. And I think the implementation schedule is planned for just for 2024, starting after January, when the rate would be adjusted. So that's when the program would really kick off. Part of what we did was we were able to create an online intake application for folks, that the city now will have control over as well. So that can be implemented. That online intake app makes it much easier for folks to access applying for the program. The nice part about this is with the partnership with the Community Action Agency, then they get the download from that intake application and they can start processing people and do the intake, which is what they are used to doing with all the other programs. So they are really well equipped to do that. They'll do that on a regular basis. The idea is that they'll send monthly updated lists for families that are eligible to the city for looking at the water bills. It doesn't mean that everybody that applies will get assistance. It'll be initially a first come, first served basis. The idea being that once you're on the list and if you still financially qualify, you'll stay on the list. You don't fall off every month and you can reinvent the list every month. But the idea being that the city, or excuse me, CAA will check and make sure that if someone applies, we'll create that potentially waiting list if necessary on a monthly basis. Also, they're planning on right now, CAA will revet or reevaluate financial status every 3 months with folks that are on that list. So again, that's a process that CAA does. They're used to doing that. Again, the beauty of this program teaming with CAA is that families who need water assistance may need assistance in other areas, and CAA is really set up to help bring those kind of resources to the table for those folks. So again, that teaming is a really key piece of what you guys are doing here. And it's, we've heard comments from folks at the state level that it's really forward thinking. It's good. I know we had some of that idea from some folks on the east side of the state that are trying to do that also. But again, it's teamwork. Everybody's pulling in the same direction, and it's a really encouraging thing. There is an agreement yet, administrative agreement that will be worked out yet, that Teresa's working on with the Community Action Agency. That's just the details of the administrative agreement. And then one of the other larger recommendations that we're making is that this group form a small subcommittee, just like we did for the work group. You guys can decide who would be on that. It's an administrative program. It's good that you stay updated on what's happening with it. There are some decisions that have to be made as the program rolls out. You know, you're going to learn as you go. We'll know how many people sign up once the thing starts, and it's going to take some tweaks and take a little guidance. And so we're advising that you create a small subcommittee for guidance of that. That will work for the city. Other than that, the only other thing that I'd like to add is I did have a discussion yesterday with Nina Staffy. She's in charge of the policy group at Michigan Department of Health and Human Services at the state level. She was in a different position, was originally on the subcommittee that reviewed these grant applications. And so she was excited when this group got that grant, and she's been following us all along. I have discussions with her every few months about how things are going. There's some initiatives at the state level for both energy affordability and housing and other things. So Michigan Department of Health and Human Services is making a larger push to look, as you guys did, at the larger picture, recognizing it's not just a water issue, not just energy, not just housing, it's all those things together, because all of those things push on families' budget. So what she'd like to do is get together at the end of this year before you guys start implementation and talk about some of the things they're doing, how things might match, where there might be other funding available. She's tied into a lot of the federal discussions and state discussions on funding as well. So that's a very encouraging thing and a good partnership. That's all I have for major points. I want to say thank you for allowing us to be part of this. It's an amazing thing that's being accomplished and being set up, and hopefully we'll have a long lasting effect.
Questions?
Can you forward that final report? Or was it the final report that we saw some time ago, or did everybody get it in my message?
I don't have it either.
I think we, I don't know if you guys had that. I guess Teresa and
Yeah, we probably.
yes, we'll forward that final. You guys don't have that. We'll get it. Yeah. So
We'll probably put it on the website.
And the only other, I guess, the major recommendation would be that once the sewer agreement is reached, hopefully that would also play into that. So there could be an adjustment on the sewer rate as well that would then fold in, again, the sewer side of the bill into that same support program. Yes.
Just a real quick math question, with that 110,000, just to remind me of direct benefit. You said you got to 288 families?
Around 280 families.
280
It's
families.
about $33 a month.
So that's a year's worth of assistance for a family.
Correct.
So it's 33 times 12
Correct.
times 288. That's right.
Correct. That provides full assistance for one family per year. And we don't know if a family would be eligible for the whole year from a financial qualification perspective. We are, I think, setting currently the income eligibility at 150% of the federal poverty level, just as a starting point, partially because it matches with other programs as well. And if they're looking, again, that's something, once the program gets rolling and you get the logistics under your belt, then look at, you can always change that. So all those things are flexible.
And Your Honor, just some additional comment on that. We are talking with other philanthropic organizations for future years, for 25 and beyond. The goal is to grow this program, but to start out with, the 1% of grades is kind of where we've got to start at some point. We've got to be able to crawl what we want. So the goal would be in time to bring in more resources and identify more resources so that we could grow the program.
That's helpful. So then just remind me, relative to the scale of the problem, where does 288 families fall?
No, that's a great question. I think we're still part of this program is trying to understand that. Because right now with water shutoffs, where water shutoffs are such a wild west. It's just it's if you don't want to pay, you're not paying, right? So we've got to be able to come back after COVID and reset and separate the ability to pay versus willingness to pay. So we kind of got to go back into do performance shutoffs, roll this program out, and then, a family can divert shut off if they sign up for this program. And, if they're determined eligible, then they stay in the program. If they're determined ineligible, the shut off stands and years, at least a year, to better understand truly how many are eligible, but how many are we eligible. Because prior to this program getting implemented, we had no way to understand if a family, just had a willingness to pay but wasn't, or didn't have the ability to pay. So the program take our system and figure out.
What are the recommendations on the subcommittee? What does that look like, and when do they activate?
Is that in the report?
Yeah, that'll be one of the final pieces. The schedule on that is really, it's not really needed until I would say closer to the end of the year when you're getting ready to do some implementation. There's glad work that Teresa's doing with the Community Action Agency on logistics and working with finance division and making sure that that process is set up, workflow is set up. But I would say not until the end of the year.
Yeah, and we also have to bring this back to Stantec. So Stantec is going to have to put this into rates. We saw the FAMS model that showed 7% for rates. That 7% can go 8%. That's 1% of water affordability was not included in that FAMS model. So when this goes in, that FAMS model is going to show 8% for water rates, and that's the program.
Thank you.
Should we put this on the agenda for next time when we get a chance to actually look at the report, and then we could maybe talk about a committee?
Sure. Yep. Okay. Anything else? Next item, the water connection fee, the equity benefit fee. And we were going to talk about the options for that with Stantec, I believe. Or
Yeah, we asked Stantec to, well, two things, Stantec to comment on different methods to calculate that. They indicated there were 3 different methods, I think, and then what those methods would result in. The preliminary numbers that Mark Pochamp did put it about $1,500. But we wanted Stantec to do that and to advise us on that, as well as a legal review, whether or not a contract amendment was necessary. So that's what we're hoping. There might be reports today, but
Well, we don't have a formal report from Stantec. We have been in discussions with Stantec, and they're proceeding to kind of work through it. Initial look at it. With that,
Lost his audio.
we've had discussions with the attorney's office, the attorney reaching out and planning to meet with Mr. Brand. So I know they scheduled that. I haven't heard back on what the outcome of that was, but some conversations to the attorney. It sounded like.
yeah. With respect to the attorney, I know that Fran has been out of town. He's been on vacation for a bit, so that might have been a difficulty as far as that's concerned. So I guess work in progress. And just James and I talked about this with respect to the different thing, and I think the appropriate time frame for applying this could be the 2024 rates calendar.
Yeah.
Because it'll take us a little more time to get this put into place. There's some discussions on the township side of what they do with their connection fees. So there's some things to be decided before we say go. So let's just keep that on the agenda. Let's wait to hear what they have to say.
And yeah, that should have a positive impact on rates. So a reduction,
Yes.
so something that we should try to get rolling.
Yes. David?
So what's our drop dead date? I want to make sure we know what this is going to look like to be prepared for those Stantec to do their rate calculations by June.
So the Stantec has the information and they're working through that. There's 2 concurrent paths, the legal pathway with, Brandon City Attorney. I think you just kind of speaking openly, I believe Stantec wants to get the full blessing from the attorneys on
Makes sense.
how this is going to get implemented, and then, they'll implement that into the rate model. And then I think Peter, Mr. Happy made the point about, this is a positive rate impact, right? So this goes in.
Can Stantec come back to us and say, here's the 3 ways, here's an approximation?
I believe so. I know they're still working on. Better promise.
That's fine, but I'm just thinking before, the attorneys have to decide whether the contract has to change. That's really all they have to do, and word it. And they need to know what method we're going to use to word it, right? I would think. So we should understand at least the different approaches as soon as possible, so we can say that makes sense to move forward with.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
we don't necessarily have a history of quick decisions on the legal side. So that's why I'm thinking that that could be the biggest holdup. I'm just trying to imagine, are there particular concerns, you know, landmines we could step in as we have this discussion, or is it, you know, nothing special about it, no concerns on one side or another in terms of, it's just going to be, you know, a little language creation?
Everything I've heard is that there is no concern from either side on the attorney side that what we're doing is legal. That what we're doing is appropriate and it's been done. The thing from the attorney side is that this was not envisioned by the contract. And if we're doing it, we should have it in the contract. So just figure out how to put it in the contract. So it's not, so we could go and we could ask Stantec to make their presentation. And then, so we shouldn't wait for the attorneys to say, here's how we're going to do it in the contract. And then start Stantec. We can get Stantec's report and then just wait for the language from the attorneys and then we'll be done. Because once we get the language from the attorneys, it's a contract amendment. The city's got to approve it in Oshkosh and Texas and Kalamazoo Township. And they have attorneys too.
Good point. So, because I just have a concern. I mean, right now the contract's sitting there done, you know, opening up the door does not then open up the door for like, well, now that we're looking at the contract again, I wish I could have tweaked this piece or this piece that I wasn't thinking about, or now it's become evident to me. So I'm just concerned about that getting into more than we need for it to be in order to be able to accomplish this within time to get the rate set. But
I think there's no time, you know,
Okay.
obviously, that, you know, the city attorney's comments were along the same lines of, you know, this is probably like the first amendment to the contract.
okay,
And
one last reminder, we're losing our city attorney.
right,
We're gonna get a new one. So he had given us a hard out date of June 1st. So that is, if we want someone who knows about the contract, that would be a good date for that to get agreement to get set. Make an offer to a new city attorney, but
So for the May meeting, have the proposed language. Is what we're aiming for, I'm hearing.
Well, we don't even know the methods to do it,
True.
you know, so we gotta move on that part, I would think,
Do we need,
if we wanna have input on
do we need a subcommittee, like, I don't know, to look at it with Stantec in the coming weeks? So that there's more, there could be a recommendation, like we could talk about the options, but
I don't think so. I think the group, as a whole, we're supportive of this. And we just need a report from Stantec. Say, here's the different ways you can do it, look at it,
and a recommendation.
and a recommendation. Otherwise, the subcommittee is just gonna come and make that same presentation
Okay.
to us. And if I'm on that subcommittee, I'd rather have Stantec make that presentation.
it. But it would be ideal if we had it before the next meeting to get it to Clyde. Right, that seems like pushing. Not that he couldn't do it, it just.
But I think for this group, the main focus needs to be on the financial, the numbers, the Stantec review. And get that part just as locked in as much as possible. And then we'll just keep moving with the attorneys as fast as possible. But I mean, basically what we've got to do is say, this is what the UBC wants to do. And have that finished. And figure out the legal part of it concurrently, but doesn't have to be done first. I agree.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jim Behrman from Stantec. I hopped on and have been sitting here listening to the discussion relative to the equity benefit fee. Our direction at the last meeting was to put together a kind of a summary memo of the three different methods that we typically see in the industry to do it. But we were also instructed, to my recollection, to not physically calculate what an equity benefit fee number would look like. So we did look at what Mark Beauchamp and UFS did, and it seems to it seems to be that it's reasonable. I just got a note from James Baker. Perhaps the memo got crossed in the email chain, but yeah, I'll be sure to resend that today because we sent it last week or week and a half ago. And perhaps I know I was on vacation and I think James, you were out for a bit. So I will resend that to you right now. So you can forward to UPC and then we can figure out next steps from there.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that? So
So we can take a look at that before we get together next time and
yes.
perhaps say that this is the way we think we should go. Send it down to the attorney.
We don't need any of the methods played out in numbers.
You know, if we see them, we probably will have a pretty good understanding of how it will happen. And if we need to have someone look at it, we could have Stantec put numbers in it. If we
Okay.
feel that way. Maybe the sooner we get it, the sooner we can look at it. And then if we have concerns, communicate with you and you communicate with James.
Okay.
Versus us all jumping on top. Is that reasonable?
Yes.
I have just a quick question for John. Is of the methods in your experience, are they wildly different? Do they?
Theoretically, because they didn't calculate it.
I understand, but in his experience with others, do those three methods end up in three completely different numbers, or is it within a margin of error? Yeah, standard deviation.
Yeah.
Jim.
Oh, Jim, sorry.
Okay.
Happy answer, but
Yeah.
Jim, did you hear the question?
Jim Berman.
Nope.
Yep. Now I'm back. Sorry, a little slow on unmuting myself. I'm sorry. What was the question again?
The question is of the three methods that you're gonna in the memo. Do they, if you do, in your experience with others, if you do the calculations, do they result in significantly different numbers?
They can. Basically, what drives the methodology typically employed is whether the existing system has capacity or not for the new customers that are wanting to join it, which typically, in this case, City of Kalamazoo has capacity, according to the analysis that UFS did. It seems reasonable. So I actually, when you asked me the question, I was checking my emails. And James, just for your benefit, the memo was sent from Andy Burnham to you on March 27th, but perhaps you didn't receive it. I will forward it to you again.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, next item is the capital improvement program update. I don't know what it means.
So I've got some updates. Tom, I don't know if you got some updates.
I have updates on the township side.
Okay.
So we put those together with help with the township staff and some of it. And what we're finding is in conversations with James is a lot of the sort of system improvements that the townships have been looking at are already on a list or on the city or in the, what do you call it when it's on the list, but it's not in the plan yet? It's
Illustrative.
yeah, illustrative. similar to cats. So those are sort of system improvements, loop closing, mostly loop closing projects. And then there's another level of that. It's the neighborhoods that are adjacent to existing public water, and whether or not those are going to be in the capital improvement plans, because they're not, there's no, other than you have more customers on the system, there's no benefit to the system. And how do we, as a UPC, want to approach that? And this is, I'm throwing it out for sort of starting the discussion. There's an Oshimo and Comstock project that maybe this discussion will continue. But for neighborhoods who are not necessarily asking for water, do we want to put some of those on the list and have the system pay for waters in neighborhoods that they may not necessarily want? Or do we, as a policy, say if you're a neighborhood that is there, we're going to give you water eventually? One thing that that I'm in the process of doing is doing a really sort of high level estimate on how much that would cost. And there's not different townships have different numbers of those, but we're just going to take, you know, in Oshimo Township, there's maybe 5 or 6 neighborhoods that would be the case. How much would that cost? What would that do to the rates? You know, just sort of a quick and dirty. You spend $1 million, what the percentage difference in the rate that would be? That would inform us as to how aggressively or not we would want to chase after that. And then understanding that, maybe we can make a policy that would say that, you know, we would consider, I don't know, this is brainstorming session is make the neighborhood do a petition so that you know at least 50% want it. Because we don't want to put water, in my opinion, I don't think we want to put water in a neighborhood that they don't want. That's going to cost the rest of the system. That's going to be subsidized by the rest of the system. The next step would be making sure that 50% want it. The next step would be recognizing that, like in new development, the developer pays for the water. That the neighborhood would pay some higher level of connection fee, or in the contract talks about surcharges, assessments, connection fees. So there's a whole bunch of levels for those that we'll need to discuss and have create a policy so that we're not struggling like this every time somebody comes and says, I want water. So the capital improvement plan has sort of kicked off that discussion. And we'll have a lot more at the next meeting. But I do need to get with your city staff in terms of some of those capital or system improvements. Anyhow, so I'll get with James on that separately.
Question for you. Is there currently any group that's saying we want water?
There's only one neighborhood in Comstock Township that has very poor water. It is very economically low income area. And we've tried to do water in there in the past, but it's sort of been a catch-22 because to make it affordable to get a grant, it's unaffordable for them to put water in. And the grants still don't pay enough to make it affordable for the people in the neighborhood. And that they're not actively have a petition, but they're the only people that I know of who have said we really need water back here. Now, some of the capital improvement, that's Shields Flat. Some of the system capital improvement does take water through that area. So take some of the economic pressure off of that project as a whole. If the system builds sort of the backbone of it through there. And then you're just running 8-inch lines up and down the streets. But again, it's a economically deprived area. They can't afford very much, and there's a lot of vacant. There's not the density. There's a lot of lots. It's one of these old flats, a lot of lots, but then there's a house, and then vacant house, vacant house. So the payback is not great.
Yeah, I think, from a system and a UPC standpoint, as we have these discussions, it seems like where we do those expansions should further come from a request from the township. So that we're not deciding which neighborhood gets water. It'd be a township coming to the system asking, not neighborhood X is now asking for it. I think we just also need to keep the philosophy of growth pays for growth. And that, especially when we expand utilities into low density areas, there's a much higher cost to that. So the example you're giving of a neighborhood that has few houses scattered around is a textbook case of a bad example of extending utilities and something like that from a cost standpoint. The one side, though, that I think we have seen a couple of times is when there's an immediate health and safety issue. Then that's a different scenario then, where you've got a group of homes or a street or even a portion of a neighborhood now that something has happened that they've got to get off their wells. And we would treat that differently.
So what if it's not their fault? I mean, that they have poor quality, that it is some legacy contamination that is,
I think that's what we've got going on in places. We've had it with Richland and PFAS examples where it's not their fault, but because of something that's happened over here, the state or the health department saying they can't use their wells.
Yeah, right. Well, this might not be to that level, but it's might be getting to that level type of thing. When do you, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of like trying to absorb this and think about all the cases that would cause that.
I don't want to bog the conversation down on the Shields plat because that's a really unique situation. Most of the neighborhoods that we're talking about are very dense. And so it could make economic sense. The payback's going to be it's more like your typical neighborhood. But in terms of the contamination issue, I think we need to support going full speed ahead for those when that happens. Because we just did it at Cooper, we did it at Richland. Yeah, that was all Cooper Township up there. Parchment, you took over that system. So
I'm trying to understand, does that mean like they're not requesting it, but we're kind of imposing it? Or am I getting that? What's driving it?
the fact that there is density out there that we could supply water to.
And
So it's a neighborhood that has it.
Yeah.
They're on, 6th Street and there's water on 6th Street. And we got 50 homes back here. And again, the first blush of this was with the townships is where are the loops that we need to close? What has James got on his docket? Put those on there. And then the last thing is there are areas that are within the system, they're adjacent to the system that have density that if it was a new development, you would obviously run water, but they're not asking for it. And that's why this conversation.
And then, Tom, if I could add to that, just specifically to Shield Flat, we have been approached by township elected officials, as they're building their capital plan, and a request to say, hey, we want to look at water in Shield's plan. What do you guys do with it too? So I think, at least in Shield's plan example, those conversations have been happening, with the township going forward to us and providing that information. Now, we haven't had the township come in and address the UBC on that, and I don't think, at least to my knowledge, there's nothing in our agreement that says that's the process for it. We're still kind of, working on it every day, how we do, building it. The site.
Yeah, we just don't want to drop capital improvement plans from all the townships that have, $50 million worth of water in neighborhoods that the neighbors don't want. And then it just, we need to just be more thoughtful about that, because we can do that, but it's gonna blow up the rates to an unacceptable level. Or maybe we do it, but we put a 25, 50-year plan, but still, we need to understand the cost of it first, so we can understand the rate implication of it, and then put together a policy to deal with that.
Before it occurs.
Yeah, before.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. The contract says you can assess. Say when you're gonna expand. Makes sense before we get that asked.
And then they say, well, and then we're struggling with each neighborhood separately as well, how much is the connection fee? Is it gonna be connection fees or not? Like to sort of globally as a system, understand how we want to approach those if and when they do come in.
Anything else?
Just a real quick update, we will be presented to the commission on Monday night, $20.5 million, 2024 drinking water, SRF, state revolving fund. This is stuff that's in our CIP already. What we're, it's coming forward is, go year packaging, going to city commission. So that project plan will be presented to the city commission Monday night. We'll talk about it. We've got a presentation, and that's, kind of bringing the next step of lead replacement down into Edison neighborhood. So that's the project area we're talking about for 2024. Just a reminder for this year, working off over $15 million in grant dollars that was awarded for north side project area. So that's still happening. That didn't go away, but we're always a year ahead of time with SRF. We're going to be talking to the city commission about Edison. We're also that project plan that we're submitting is a bigger project plan that covers all of our lead service work all the way through 2029. It also covers a significant amount of water main replacement. So something that's new, we've demoed it a few times, got a few installations in the city. Big enough, it's still strong enough, but it's one other comment. We have an ability as we get into next year, in future, DWSRF plans, we would like to edit or revise some of those. Our plans. Looks at an extension for our options. So you could have fields plan. Example. That's one that gets way make it.
Thank you. Item D, the utility financial policy, continued review and discussion.
I don't know if everybody had a chance to go through this, kind of bad. And I don't know if everybody wants to discuss it or what have you. So one question that I have is, and it's to James, I think, and it might be to Mr. Chamberlain here. The information in that on the website, which anyone can look at, it has kind of a background document, and then it has an impact document, and then it has a resolution at the back of it. And I think the resolution is to approve this. Couldn't you take a look and, so that we understand what the utility financial policy actually is, because there's a lot of stuff. And so I would ask, maybe for the next time we got together, we could say, there's a couple pages right by this that say, here's what we think we're saying. And if maybe you could take a look at it, or someone who is involved, it might have been before you did. But just to come back and say, this is what the policy is, and then we could look at the 2 pages together. I mean, there's a lot of good history in here. Some of this is related to when there were lawsuits pending and these policies were coming out, maybe more for wastewater versus water. But that would be my ask, that we could say, that is the policy. At the very back of the packet, it's there. I can give it to you.
I'm sorry.
But otherwise, there's a whole lot of stuff that we're seeing right now with the financial policy. And we should understand it's this. Is my take on it after looking at it.
What page is that?
It doesn't have any numbers on the one I just printed it, so I don't have any page numbers, but it starts with, for budgetary purposes, annual revenue requirement is 1.4. And I think that is the case, but I just wondered if the rest is that's the case, then we could just look at that.
So really what you're asking for, what is the actual policy?
Yeah.
Is it 2 pages or is it 50 pages?
Yeah. So a lot of this is like why we want the policy.
Oh, okay.
And so if we said this is the policy, then we can all say, great, we can have input on it. And at this point in time, we don't feel like or, whatever. I don't know.
This is what you handed out last time, right?
It's about this thing, right?
Yeah,
And it's got the green highlighting.
yes.
Yeah. But I mean, the actual, it says utility financial policy. And then there's an actual segment that says utility financial policy impact.
Yeah, that's at the very end.
And then there's an end to it where there's a resolution. So here's the impact part. So if you look at the whole thing, but just so that we're all on the same page, that is the policy. I think that's important for us to know.
So, yeah, I think we'll
If
figure,
you could,
we'll figure out things. What is the actual utility?
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of times when these things get adopted, there's a lot of supporting documentation as to here's the research that was done, or here's the analysis was done, or here's a memo, or here's why it was done, because it's within the context of whatever was going on. At that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my thought is that we could narrow it down to say, here is the meat of it right there, these couple pages. And then we could look at it right here at the table, no homework for anyone, as long as it's not too giant. And we could say, that seems to make sense, let's not have any input at this time. Or if the city comes back and says, we need to change this, then we should understand what it is, probably. If that's reasonable.
Yeah, we can get that down. We don't have any plans right now we don't have any pending changes to policy. Usually when the city adopts its annual budget, that's when we make any financial policy changes at that time.
Sure. And I don't have any questions about it.
Thanks, Peter. Next item E is the Stantec update on the 2023 water rates, continued review and discussion. And then also including the water financial data review, I believe you requested, Peter.
I provided a summary, so I don't know if Stantec has anything to bring to us, any updates. I think they were working on several aspects of the BAM process.
Yeah, this is Jim again. I can give you a quick update if I may, kind of where we're at from our end. We've been working with James in the city. The return component that's in the water service agreement requires us to kind of develop a 2024 gross plant, net plant, and working capital number. So that requires us to kind of start with actual year-end 22 asset registry, plant asset registry data. So we're working through that with the city. That's going to take us a little bit of time to finalize things there. So we continue to work on it. You know, when I logged into the call this morning, I heard, you know, it was a discussion ongoing on the potential affordability program. The implications of that may also have to be factored into FAMs, as well as the equity benefit fee landing spot, if you will. Those are all common things for us as we build the financial models. So I don't anticipate any of those being a roadblock as we work through it. So we'll continue to work with James in UPC to keep things on schedule so that ultimately we can finalize a recommendation for the 2024 rate increase. The 7% figure that, you know, we shared with you at our last discussion is, you know, preliminary. Some of these things will tweak that number, hopefully not too severely. So that's kind of where I see us at from a Stantec perspective.
Thank you.
And I provided a worksheet that has numbers on it. It's printed landscape. I left some in the back of the room for those that are interested. I tried to distribute them to folks. And so I received from James's staff a revenue and expenditure report for 2023 and 2022. We've looked at something similar. This is easier to follow because there is a consistent use of the various departments, sub-departments, where last year we were looking at some of this. They had switched the departments so it was longer. And I just wanted to, so I took the revenue and expenditure reports for 23 and 22 through March, thinking we would look at this once a quarter. And so you can see at the top of the page, it has the wrong year end. I put down 12/31/23. I should have put 3/31 on the left. But anyways, the budgeted amount for the whole year, the actual for 2022, the actual for 2023, and then I compared 2023 with the budget. So scanning down that, I would expect us to be at about 25% or a quarter into it, right? I think we're a little bit low because of accruals and reversals. It's an accounting thing. When we get to the 6 month, I would expect us to be at about 50%. And then I compared 2023 to 2022 actual, and you can see we're almost at 100% or a little above 100% or a little below 100% of 2022's through 3/31. And so when I go down near the midpoint range, you can see a bold line. It says total revenue. I just looked at that following number, 109% of last year's revenue through 3/31, which makes sense to me as we change the rates after the beginning of the year, right? And then I kind of scanned through and said, we're at about 100% approximately of all these other categories. Nothing really stuck out at me, but I thought it would be appropriate for us to look at this on a quarterly basis. If we don't want to, we don't need to, but things look like they're on track. James just saw it today. So I just got that second report last night. So, but that would be our look at where we're at on a quarterly basis. You know, about where we were last year and less than budget, but there's a substantial amount of capital in there. So you have to consider those bottom categories are the big dollars, but nothing that struck me as concerning.
I appreciate this, Peter.
James,
Good summary.
I know you just saw it.
Yeah, I mean, everything's looking, the track around 25%, there's, you know, 2 line items that are facility. You know, new code.
From a city standpoint, I mean, this data is drawn directly from the city's data.
Yes.
It's just a reformatting of it.
Yep, yep,
Yeah, we would.
Yep,
And
exactly.
So in our own internal systems, we have the ability, obviously, to pull almost infinite types of reports so that we can look into every line item to see where we are for this year compared to last year, what we have encumbered, what's been actually spent, what's remaining. So that's an ongoing continuous process that we have, not only for the water system, but obviously for, you know, everything in public services, you know, other departments too. But from the water standpoint, yeah, this is a summary of much larger reports.
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
have.
actually, if someone wants it, you can go into any one of these balances, click on it, it'll show you every account that makes it up. So it's basically, it's right off of your report, it's just a summary that I do electronically to try and get away from looking at 40 pages, look at one if we can. Thanks. So if you want to email me, I'll send it to you, and you click on it, and it'll show you the wages, benefits, FICA, whatever, for everyone.
Any other questions on this? Proceeding to item F, the standard easement form, and I think, this has gone through the review and,
We were trying to determine that. Again, Tim was on vacation out of the country. And, because we have the standard easement document that we've worked with Texas Township on. I think Clyde put it together. Just want to have Tim, you know, bless it. And then we can have all of the township and the city use that. The issue with the townships is we want to make sure, because that's the city system, that the easement is given to the township and the city of Kalamazoo, as opposed to the township and the city acting as our agent. We just want to be more proactive about that. But then it was updated because the old easements were probably, the townships were using were probably 30, 40 years old. So just need to have Tim say that looks good, or maybe just tweak that tweak, and then that can be the standard easement throughout the system. Tim Grant, the regional commission, so the sort of represents the townships on the legal side.
He's an attorney.
An attorney, yes. Well, there was, anyway.
I'm sorry, do we need to compare this to the old one? I mean, have the two together? Or, I mean, it's obviously, it sounds like it's a blending of two different townships and the city's agreements.
Nope, it was an easement that I believe Clyde put together.
Who is the city's attorney?
It was the city's attorney. And all the same things are in there, just stated in a different manner, and including both township and city, as municipal corporations. And also in this case, rather than just the owner signing off on the easement, the owner and the township and the city sign off on it. But again, just let's get a standard easement for the system.
it makes all the sense, you know, we've got.
Yeah.
This issue come up. Well, this will come back and it won't actually be, we're not adopting it as a group here, are we? It's related to the contract, so we need to know about it.
Yeah, I mean, we could, it doesn't hurt for us to accept it and make that standard.
So do we need to take action then?
No,
After Tim reviews it, but that hasn't happened yet. Okay.
This is Jeff. I have a question about easements.
We're okay with that?
sure.
Yes.
What about prior easements for water and sewer that the townships have procured in years past? Will those have to be re-executed or can we use those as we have them?
No, we wouldn't go through that. There would be hundreds and hundreds of those that, those still stand and they still reference. You know, in Cooper Township, somebody would have given an easement to the township, their agents and assigns. So really the city is an agent or an assign. But now that the system has changed through the contract, this is a more appropriate easement, but those still stand.
Thank you.
Thanks. New business, professional services invoice approval.
Was Buffett or do you have that on your?
Oh, yes, we added, that
Oh,
is
gotcha.
D. I put it down as D under
Okay,
7. Professional services invoice. Redeveloped in the amount of $180 for the February 28th, 2023 invoice. And 1248.60 for the March 31st invoice, also redeveloped.
I'll move the approval of the February 28, 2023 and one dated March 31, 2023 for redevelopment.
I'll support. One note, the same invoice number exists on both of them. So I'll check it out.
A motion by Jeff, second by John to approve the 2 redeveloped Hafner invoices as presented, but let's double check on the invoice number. All those in favor?
I stand.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0, 1 abstention. And then we have the Ryan and Newhoff invoice dated 4/11/2023, the amount of 1303.4.
I'll move that. Also, Brian Newhoff invoice dated 4/11/2023 approval.
And I'll support.
We have a motion by Jeff, second by John. Approve the invoice as presented. All those in favor?
Oh, sorry. Abstain.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0, 1 abstention. Okay. We have an update on the water service agreement appendix E.
Yeah, that's the document, here is based on all our average unit costs, pricing from our suppliers, and, you know, where we obtain the figures from. So, we're requesting, EPC approval, for that.
Question for you. The pricing where it says 2023, and then it like lists battles and those things. I just want to make sure I understand. That would be the instance.
That's correct. So for engine and quarters. In terms of engineers.
There's $6,000, one was it 4,500? Or 6,000. So we contract. $6,000. Years worth of cash. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 300. Your side, our side, urban, rural. Side, suburban, no curb and gutter, no sidewalk, easy service, it's, $2,000. You could have a, you know, your city urban core, sidewalk, curb and gutter, street tree, all kinds of things there, that might be $8,000. So he's run the gamut, and, several years ago, we went to this methodology where just average everything out. And it really is a good deal. This 2023, $6,000, it's based on an average cost of for the 2022. So you're always lagging. It takes us a year to build it. So in terms of the value for those connections, that we feel really strongly that's a very reasonable cost and very high value that's getting passed on. The things that occurred.
We've lost audio on our end.
New range. So there's you one-off infill housing that happens.
Any other questions?
Is there a need for us to do anything with that, or is that more informational? I don't recall in the contract. Do you, Thomas?
It's on our agenda as an update, but that's a good question.
I just wondered as it's part of it as appendix D, right?
So the contract says that appendix D was meant to be a living document.
Okay.
Obviously, it changes every year, so the contract says it can be amended by agreement between the city and the UPC.
Okay.
So it doesn't require a contract and all that. It was set up that way so that just.
So we should approve it.
Right.
Okay.
Probably would need a motion to.
Yeah.
Like
approval of appendix D.
That's,
There's a motion by David, second by Peter to accept appendix D as presented. Any further discussion? I apologize, I'm getting text, it's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7C, projects for review and consideration, and we already had some of that conversation, I think. There is an national project that is, I'll call it live, very much going on, along with the sewer projects that went out to bid for second time this year, and we did have successful bidders for that project, and it's going to our board on April 25th to award the sewer contracts, accept the bond, etc. So as part of that project, there is a water main extension along West Main right out here from to 7th Street. So on the north side of the street, we have it on the south, so part of the long-term plan to happen. And with the sewer going in, it's proposed to go along with that project, but it's certainly separate. It's not part of that USDA work. So the question is, what is the process for Ashmo in this? Bringing it to the board. We have a draft memo, but it's not ready for prime time. Again, we need to talk through some of the issues of what is system, is there any part of it that's not system, it's neighborhood, essentially. Neighborhood meaning future development. It does provide some of the looping that's planned long-term. So again, these are some judgment calls we've got to look into.
So do we look for a future update of that, or is there something we need to do or consider, or will we see a memo or?
So the issue here is there's potentially capital improvement plan, a project that may, if we had started this thing 5 years ago, that may have been included in the capital improvement plan. And should that be paid for by the system or by connection fees and assessments and all that is in the contract? So it's something that's happening before we have our policy put together. And there's potentially one in Comstock Township, and I saw the agenda, and I haven't had, they did do an extension down 26th Street last year, I believe. And I don't know if the contract was in effect at that point. Need to look into it a little more, but just how do we handle these? Because we don't want to stop this and then put it in the plan for 5 years down the road. How do we address that? Do we keep it on the agenda and apply the policy retroactively? That's sort of a question. That is,
But, I mean, at some point, we've got to get from the on-ramp to the highway. The bird lanes don't run out. Townships lose their ability. Think, projects that are queued up and ready to go, those are probably bring those in the capital program and show them. I think we're getting near, we've got a lot of discussion from on the table. I think we're nearing the point where we're probably starting to build that capital program, show it, in Excel, and really see what it looks like so that we can get that stuff out.
How do we go about doing that? So that these two projects, does it make sense to, I don't know what, and you're probably aware of what, you have to approve that.
Yeah, I think we're involved with it. System.
Could they await next year, or could there be like that subsequent reimbursement that was done for that developer?
I can't speak for the Comstock project. For Ashmos, it will be awarded this year, but the chances are it's likely going to be constructed in 24, but it's really up to the contractor at this point to set that schedule. But the reason, that's sort of the history of the sewer bids, that we didn't get bids for 23 because they were already booked. So our guess is it will be 24, but can't guarantee it. But I think it sounds to me like we need to get the information to James And we're actually going to be perhaps using these two as an example, simultaneously developing the policy,
Well,
or,
the 26th Street in Comstock clearly is a system improvement because it's been on their plans for years, and that would have been in the capital improvement plan. The Oshimo one is, in my opinion, is probably in the same category, but it has not been in the city's system. So
yes, it's been in Oshimo's long range
Oshimo's,
capital plan.
but not the city. So this, the Comstock was easy, Oshimo, it just needs to have been put into the city, I guess. So I don't think we should stop the project and wait for it to get into the CIP, but maybe that we address these two sort of the special cases until that we have a policy, because again, both of them will have been in the CIPs that will be adopted, and then we look at those moving forward as part of the system improvements.
So do we have to take some action, or we're gonna work on this rapidly?
You know, I think I have to work with the city staff on the CIPs for the townships anyway. And that'll give us the opportunity to look at those. And have discussions and then bring it back to the UPC as to how best to approach that.
I think maybe a place to start is, look at the actual example, is how would we have funded that, the system? How would the system have required that to be paid for without the contract? Looking at it previously, and you just kind of use that as a starting point. And then now, okay, we've got the contract, we've got the UPC. Would it be any different? Would the decision be any different, like, as we bring it back here? But at least we could use that as a starting point of like, how would this project have typically been paid for before?
Yeah. I agree.
So you'll be reporting back?
Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is item 8, the committee member alternate attendee guest comment. So, oh, yes, we have D, sorry, D, the wellhead protection.
So the contract requires that the townships implement a wellhead protection plan. We did just get information from Gene Chalanda. And again, Texas is sort of Texas in 2014 put together a wellhead protection program that mimicked the cities. So we have a good ordinance to look at from that standpoint. And then the performance standards that the city's been working on, and now there's an updated draft. So those just need then to go to the townships for their consideration. And so Jean just sent that to Texas. I don't know if she sent it to the other townships, but we'll help corral the townships. And the idea would be to get a standard performance standards, a standard ordinance. So everybody's very, very close, if not exactly the same. And the contract says that they'll adopt the performance standards, but the city, in terms of Gene's email, indicated that there's potential for tweaking of both of them, depending upon the situation that they may or may not have in the particular township. I don't know that any of those tweaks would be of any significance, but we'll help them look at that.
It may be beneficial to know that going to performance standards, we're actually looking at the capture zones, as opposed to just taking an entire township and saying your entire township is flood protection. I'll use Pavilion as an example. If you look at the entire township of Pavilion, there's just two little sliver, like little fingerprints towards the top that are, capture zones, if you will. So with Pavilion adopting the flood protection ordinance from the standards would allow essentially no change in the entire township except for those two. It will fingerprint spots, you know, we would have language that would essentially prevent a gas station going in, at that area. So it's really easy to work with from a township perspective in terms of it's going to support all your growth development.
Yeah, and we have, the townships have that in their GIS or the old capture zone, we just got there's an update.
Yeah, there's updated capture zone. They moved around a little bit.
Yep.
Some fun down along here.
Yeah, so really for the townships, it's, you can't have a scrap yard or an oil processing facility within those areas. There's some use restrictions. And then again, really for the townships, it's stormwater management. What do you do for stormwater management in those zones? That also talks about underground storage tanks, above ground storage tanks, but a lot of that is already covered under other regulations through the state. So, yeah, it'll allow the townships to have a consistent stormwater design policy too, which will be good because they're sort of a little bit all over the place.
James, I saw you had a long, maybe it was minutes from the meeting with township where they were. There's 240 acres of 30.
Yeah, I think it's wrong here.
Would they have implications of
We don't have a contract with them.
so it was really just
Options.
I thought, reading it through the transcripts, kind of can't get the inflection from the people's voices, but it sounded tense at times, but it ended amicable. It felt like that, like just in reading.
Yeah, I think it was a very positive experience for me, and I think just talking to the board, I got the impression that board is a reflection of the citizens. I think there's a lot of citizens that have a lot of concern. Well, what the intention of say council do, stated. So maybe you get down to the citizen level, and you read on Facebook, or what your neighbor told you, or what your other. Maybe yeah.
Thank you. Now the next item, 8, committee member alternate comments, guest comments. Let's start with online. Just go down the list. Jeff Sorensen.
Yes, good morning. Good discussion today. I would ask that whatever technical difficulties are having with James Baker's mic, it has been only getting about 5% of his conversation. The rest is lip reading. So I would really appreciate if for those that are producing or attending by Zoom, that if you could check into that, please, it'd be helpful. Other than that, that's all I have. Great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Rich.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again. I concur with Jeff Sorensen on both his report on the mic system and also on a good meeting. It does seem to me, and I was glad Mr. Bierman joined us, because it does seem to me that all of these discussions that are still on the table, the equity benefit fee and the township's connection fee and the whole enchilada there is really related to the contract and the way the system's going to grow and making it available for new neighborhoods to connect at some reasonable cost. And then hopefully the new connections start cash flowing the system even better. So it's kind of interesting from a global perspective, and I appreciate the great discussion and the leadership of the entire UPC team here as this contract gets implemented and flushed out, pun intended. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Joe,
I'm all set. No comment at this time. Thank you.
thank you. Steve,
No comment from me, thank you.
Brian,
Thank you very much.
So over the years,
thank you. Anything else? Tom?
Nope. I'm all set.
Happy birthday.
Oh.
Yeah. Good job.
All right, thank you. Our next meeting is May 11th. Same time, same place, and we have exhausted the agenda and we are adjourned.
Usually birthday girl brings in donuts.